Hi everyone, my name is Danielle and welcome to another episode of Board Game Bakes. This week we're going to focus on the Guild of Merchant Explorers, which is a new game produced by AEG. I helped with AEG's big game night at Gen Con, so I had to learn the rules and teach them to 3 tables of people, so I've got them down now. In the game, you're explorers, and they realize that their maps are too old, so they send explorers out to remap the kingdom. So it's fun because there's 4 different rounds, and each round you get all your explorers back, so you just start off based from your city. So when you start the game, you'll have 1 spot you can leave from, and as it grows, you have more and more places you can explore from. So we're going to do Avenia, which is the first one, and that's the one that we played with that big game night, so it's the most well known. And we're going to recreate that on fondant and then put it on top of a chocolate cake, because I asked AEG what kind of cake they want and they said chocolate. So it's a very chocolate cake. Let's get started. I asked AEG what flavor cake they want and they said chocolate. So we're going to make a chocolate cake with chocolate frosting. So lots of chocolate. To start, make 2 13x9 chocolate cakes or whatever flavor you want. Box cake or your favorite homemade recipe, no judgment. Once your cakes are cooled, I recommend freezing or at least cooling them a bit so it's easier to cut them. Next, make your chocolate frosting. I even splurged for this and got really nice cocoa powder. Mix 3 sticks of softened unsalted butter until light and fluffy. Add in 5 cups of powdered sugar, a half a cup of cocoa powder, 3 teaspoons vanilla extract, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 4 tablespoons of half and half. You can turn your mixer right on, but I decided it was less messy to mix it with a rubber spatula a little bit first. Keep whipping it until it's light and fluffy, and you could always add more powdered sugar to thicken it, or more milk to make it thinner, to depend on what consistency you're looking for. Either way, it should taste delicious. To prep your cake for decorations, I took the actual Avenia board and shrunk it down so it fit on a 13x9 cake. Before cutting, check your cake to see if the top is flat or if it's domed. If it's domed, shave off some of the top to make it flat. The stencil is about 8 by 10 inches. Unfortunately, one of my 13x9 pans is smaller than my rectangular one that has straight edges, so it didn't fully fit on top of the cake. But either way, you're going to use your stencil to cut the cake, and you could always make sure that the bottom top layers are the same size when you stack them up later. Once your cakes are all cut out, use a few dots of frosting to attach the bottom layer of your cake onto your cake board. Now we're going to apply a nice generous amount of frosting on top, spread out evenly, and this is going to be the filling of your cake. Put on your top layer of cake, and then we're going to apply a thin coat of frosting over the whole cake, which is the crumb coat. This way, when we're actually icing it, we shouldn't catch as many crumbs in our final layer of frosting. Put in the fridge for about 30 minutes until it's firm to the touch. Now add the rest of your frosting over the cake and try and make the edges as straight as possible. I like using the bench scraper on the sides, and I'm slowly getting better at doing the straight edges. Now put your cake back in the fridge to get firm before applying your fondant. While you're here, make sure you subscribe for new and exciting videos every Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST. I've got a lot of Gen Con games to share. The map we're creating has a light tan color, so to make the same color, we're going to take a full batch of marshmallow fondant, but we're only going to put in 1 to 2 drops of brown food coloring. And it's not going to apply a lot of color, but this will give it like a nice little accent instead of just being plain white. To make your map, roll out a piece of fondant that's slightly smaller than the stencil used to cut out your cake. So I think I just cut out the whole thing and then I cut off some of the sides, this way I knew it would be smaller. Transfer it to a piece of parchment paper, and then you want to let it dry a little bit before decorating it, so this way it's not so wet. Okay, time for the most fun and daunting part of the bake. Use your markers to create a thin border around the end of the map. I decided to make the map label as one of my first things so that I sure I had enough space for it to go on and make sure it would pop. To do most of the details, you can create edible paint by taking a drop of food gel and mixing it with some alcohol. This way the water will evaporate and not leave your fondant all soggy. Once your map is properly labeled, you can begin with the details on the board of the map. There's a pretty castle and a little town. Use gray to create the castle and green for the hills. When going through this initial layer, it's okay if you don't love how it starts because our layers are going to grow. Our next step is to use white paint to create the clouds around the border of the map. This way you have a defined area for where your land and water should go. One of my favorite parts about this game is that it's so easy to scale up and include more people. At Big Game Night, there are probably hundreds of people that are all playing at the same time, and it's so cool. My game night group now has a few copies of the game, so I'm excited to see how we could all play together. For the next part, prep your paints for the different sections of your map. You'll need tan, copper, light green, and blue. This way you could fill it in as you go. I decided that this would make the map look a lot more realistic than if I went through and did one color at a time. Start at your central city, which is where your actual explorers will start in the game, and just begin creating chunks of different colors. Try to make them hexagon shaped, but I also accepted that it was unlikely that maybe you can, but that I would be able to create perfect hexagons. The most important part is to have sections connecting and the correct parts of the map. It's fun looking back and seeing how the map starts and how it progresses to something so fun. Once you're happy with your land masses, it's time to add water. Fill in your remaining parts of the map. This is probably where I'd recommend stopping to take a break or at least let it dry fully before continuing. Like in the game, there are 4 rounds. At the end of each round, all your explore pieces come back and get reused for another round, so at this point we need to collect our resources and start fresh. For the next phase of decorating, you mainly use edible markers to add in details. The clouds need a lot of squiggles to resemble the board, and there are little mountain peaks dispersed within the clouds. The next part is tricky. Depending on how accurate your painting was, you could add lines for hexagons to represent the actual tiles, or I decided to mainly outline only the sides of an area, so like all of the green area or all of the tan area, instead of doing the individual hexagons because my hexagons were not perfect and it'd also make your cake very, very busy. However, you want to take time to add peaks for your mountain sections and wait for your sand and grass, so this way it's not just a solid clump of paint. Now you just need to add some finishing details and your map is done. In the game, it's fun seeing how different everyone's board gets starting from the first moves. Everyone starts at the same spot and we are all playing the same initial cards, so it's cool to see which direction that people go and how some people do the same, and even if they start the same, how they all wind up different. One extra detail you can make is the symbol representing the towers in the game. When you play, each tower you find is worth more and more points than the previous one. They also have pretty shapes, so it's fun to reproduce and put on the cake. Time to put it together. Roll out the rest of your tan fondant so it's 1/8 of an inch thick. Use your rolling pin to roll it off the table. And retrieve your cake from the fridge. You want to use your paintbrush to put a little moisture on the cake so this way your fondant will stick. To apply your fondant, drape it over and then smooth the top. It's nice and smooth, and then you're going to smooth the sides, but the trick is you have to gently pull on it so this way you don't get little ridges or folds in your fondant. Now you're ready for the map. Use a little water to stick the map onto the cake. Ta-da! Okay, this is where I originally planned to end my bake, but the sides look so sad and lonely. So I whipped out my paintbrush and decided to paint little trails of explorers and saves along the sides of the cake. It was a fun idea and I love how it turned out. Now the explorers have mapped Avenia and it's time to eat some cake! Thanks for watching another episode of Board Game Bakes. I hope you enjoyed seeing the map go on the cake and then all the fun little details that we add on the side. It was really cool getting to give the game to AEG and have them eat it and enjoy it, because a lot of times they make my cakes and my friends are just the lucky ones who get to eat them. And I'm glad the AEG team enjoyed it too. Thanks again for them for sending me the games and for doing what they do. I had a blast at Gen Con, but if you went to Gen Con, what was your favorite thing you saw, your favorite game or experience? And if you didn't go, what's the game that came out that you're looking forward to the most? Let me know in the comments. Keep playing games and keep them sweet. Bye!